Greetings, Marsh here, and welcome to episode 165 of my modded Factorio playthrough. In this episode, we're going to see what we can do about improving our glass production. Because as you see, it's going at full blast. And this was designed based on the amount of silicon we are going to get, which was roughly 30 per second. But we have since upgraded our production using crystal catalysts, and now we can put out 60 per second. And we definitely need more glass. And since we have access to blue science, we can research some better, more efficient ways of making glass. Which we can get to here. It's got some prerequisites. So let's see if we can take care of those. We can do Metallurgy 3, which goes down a chain similar to the other machines, where we need aluminum, concrete, brass, and white circuits. I don't necessarily want to upgrade the whole factory right now, just because we're probably going to have to handcraft these. But certainly this is stuff we can put on the new bus, and then we can upgrade everything. And then powder metallurgy 2. Same general requirements. And that gets us to glass too. So now, instead of just using silicon, we'll use silicon and lime to make the glass mixture, which will cut silicon use in half. And also, to make glass, we will have to add molten lead. That might seem kind of weird, but it's similar to, I think, how zinc was done, where you add lead, but then you get it back. So you don't actually have to spend any lead to do this. And it also allows us to make glass fiber for fiberglass boards for later. But we want it for the glass. While we're here, we should probably consider upgrading aluminum as well. And this will just allow us to use the ore processors like we are with other processes. And then we add the sodium hydroxide to get aluminum hydroxide, and then we can turn that into aluminum. And I think this is a Mad Clown's recipe, so I don't know how relevant it's going to be, but you can mix magnesium and aluminum to get aluminum. But to do that, we're going to have to research ore processing 2, which will give us many more efficient methods of creating ores. We don't really care about that for now. We're just here for the aluminum because aluminum is also kind of short, and one advantage of using less aluminum ore, even though we can make as much as we need, is that the less aluminum we need, that's the less crystal catalyst we need, which is more crystal catalyst for silicon or other processes. So we'll grab that, but another consideration is aluminum sheet coils. And since we're preparing to build a new bus, we definitely don't want to build a bus based on plates if we have the ability of making coils. Now, it's not necessarily worth retrofitting the existing factory to use coils, but certainly because of that effort required, any new setup, if it's at all possible to use sheet coils, it should be set up from the beginning to use sheet coils. And of course, making those coils, we can use productivity modules to get more out of it as well. And this also will add a recipe where we can add manganese to aluminum to get more aluminum. And actually, that might be a better use of manganese rather than putting it into iron, because aluminum is a little harder to get than iron. But to do that, we have a few more researches we have to do. First, we have to research the ability to make coolant, which is used in the higher tiers of coil production. But basically, we take water, add a little bit of that mineral oil, which is a nice use of it, and we can create coolant. And then when you use the coolant, it gets hot, as you would imagine, and then it has to go through a cooling tower to cool down, which interestingly will produce steam, which will allow you to get a little energy back from it. But once you've cooled that coolant down, you can send it through a filter and get fresh coolant back, but you don't get all of it back. So that is a use of some of that mineral oil, which is definitely building up. But we don't really need this process right now, because we're only going for aluminum coils, but certainly we can apply it to other things. And then strand casting machine 2, which we certainly can make. And that fills up our research queue, but from here all we need to do is research the aluminum 2. So let's let that go. You can kind of watch what's going on with the bus here. It's keeping pretty busy, really. Silver's following a little bit behind, but you see it's kind of a a shortage on these catalysts. We are creating silver, just not very fast, and it isn't really a fast thing to create. So we could improve crystal catalyst production by washing for geodes from mud water, but I want to try to avoid that if possible, and one way we could make these go farther is by reducing our ore requirement for all these different ores. So if we need less silicon, then that's more crystal catalyst for aluminum. And if we need less aluminum, that's more crystal catalyst for silver. And it goes on and on. So that is definitely something we want to try to do. And if we're still short, even after doing all of those upgrades, well then yeah, I guess we need to wash for some geodes here. But right now it's not a critical shortage because the bus is fine. It's not overloaded on any one resource. But you see, like, it's keeping up with silicon just fine. It's the production of glass that's slow. So let's see what our new glass technology will get us. Let's add a new line in here, and we have the old line to compare, but let's just delete it and put a new line in here. And let's say we want to make glass from molten glass, which comes from glass mixture, which comes from silicon. That's the original way we're making it. And let's just say we'll calculate it by input. We have 60 ore per second. Now, we don't necessarily need to produce it this fast, but this gives you an idea of efficiency. So 60 ore goes in, and 45 glass comes out, so we lose a little bit there. So let's look at some of the locked recipes here, where we want glass from glass 2, from molten glass, which is the same, and then the glass mixture from lime. And now let's set it to input and say we want 60 silicon ore going in. So you see that our 60 ore is now producing 120 glass compared to 45. So we're basically going to triple our silicon efficiency when it comes to glass by using glass 2 compared to glass 1. So absolutely, this is worth doing. And there's some requirements that go into this. But first, let's go through here and use the correct machines, because we are researching powder mixer 2s now. So we want to make sure to include those. And they're in here. They have a module slot. No productivity, so let's just slam a speed module in there. Well, that certainly helps. The induction furnaces. Also some speeds. And the casting machines, which strangely enough also do not use any productivity modules, so more speeds. Although let's make sure we're using the correct machine type. Looks like we did some research here, so let's grab the final thing there. But we have furnace 3s here and casting machine 3. So we want to make sure to use all of the correct machines here. So it's actually number 3, which has another module slot. Which, when you get these higher tier machines, it really dramatically reduces the amount of them that you need when you can start piling in the modules. But we have this, and do we really want to use all 60 per second? No, that was just an example number. We actually want to base this on output, and we have a requirement of 35 per second for science, so let's just set this to 60. And that makes sense with belts, because this is one red belt of these inputs and then 2 of an output, so that kind of makes sense. And that's the glass element of it. We also do need to process this lead oxide, which is pretty simple. We can get rid of it by adding carbon. We'll use the next tier of blast furnace. Set this to carbon. And set this to input. And let's see, can we get rid of some of these machines with speed modules? Yep, but that last one doesn't do anything. So we'll just do an efficiency. And then that creates these lead ingots. Now, one thing that you can do with this is you could send this lead to other processes if you really wanted to. Like solder or brass here, but I don't really see the need for that. I'll just keep them all locally with the same process here, so it's simpler. But we got speed modules there, and when we come back, that's just a loop. So we just need to put some ingots in there to start the process, and then it will be self-sufficient. And then the big one is lime. We don't have any central repository for lime. We are dumping it right here at concrete, because some processes do make a small amount of lime, but we probably want to change that and move it over to aluminum, because it's probably a better use of lime than concrete, but nonetheless, it's a pretty easy process. We just have to wash light mud water to get it. And what's that? Aluminum. We are short on aluminum. I think it's sodium hydroxide is just falling behind. Yeah, so we can't make any aluminum right now. But I believe we are producing it. Yeah. And kind of low on saline water, which is hurting the production rates. We do have the sodium hydroxide here. Is it being sent up to science? Yeah, pretty much. Seems like once it catches up, it'll be fine. But still, we might want to upgrade this a bit at some point. Basically, just have another saline water generator, because we're making it down here. But my guess is it has trouble making it to the other side of the factory, because it's so far away. So we'll probably want to have a similar process like this over there, making some, but it could just be that the sodium hydroxide request is very high right now, just because we ran out of it and it never really caught up since the changes that we made to its logic. And really, because this is a primary producer of sodium hydroxide, it really ought to be done right here where it's being stored. It's kind of an inefficient method of doing things where the storehouse for the item is not next to where it's being produced. So we probably can help this a bit by moving this whole process up here, but I kind of want to see if it just works like it is, so we can not have to go through that. But we have washing plant 2, which is the best machine we can use. Let's see. But we're not linking to the correct thing because we're not making the correct thing. We don't want to make limestone, we want to make lime itself. Right here. And since we don't need any solid fuels for this, we might as well use the most ideal thing, which is the wood blocks. And speed modules. Then the limestone comes from the light mud water. Probably want to set this up in such a way where they can be direct inserted. So if we do this, but we had 15 washing plants going into 15 blast furnaces, we could potentially do it. Or we can shrink it down by using these speed modules and do like 2 of them or whatever, but probably better just to do it this way so we can do the direct insertion. Because I think that's kind of how it's being done elsewhere. Yeah, and in fact, this design ought to work just fine. We'll just need to change some things around, but we shouldn't have to rebuild it because it's already there. But we need to go down the mud water chain here. And it looks like 1 speed module will help, but 2 will not, so we'll do speed and efficiency. So it'll be something like that. And the inputs are all things we can work with. So there we go. There's what we need. So let's go around collecting everything. Gotta do some handcrafting to make the higher tier machines, but a lot of the lower tier machines are already being made, so that's a little less we'd have to make. It looks like washing plants are not something that's being made. probably should automate that. Just do it based on one machine. And I won't worry about speed or anything, so we can just throw some efficiency modules in there and call it a day. Looks like it uses a lot of the same materials as right here, so we can probably just plop one more machine on the end. Okay, hopefully that's all of it. Oh, those don't quite reach. There we go. Could put speeds in there, but I'm not really sure how well it's going to work, considering that a lot of these resources aren't produced that fast, so it's just going to overload the factory. So that's kind of why I'm thinking, just put the regular ones in there. Okay, so now we have a bit of a shopping list. I kind of picked up the things that we need. So then I know that we just have to handcraft them. And once they're all out of the inventory, then we have enough. Well, it looks like aluminum's finally getting its sodium hydroxide again. So I set a limiter here so that it will hold at least 10,000 before sending it outside. So hopefully that will improve that a little bit. But all this should be caught up soon. Looks like research is kind of going pretty slow, but it's probably just ran out of aluminum. But actually looks like glass caught up. And I started using Circuit HUD here, so we can check to see what the ore bus is doing without going down there. And it looks like it's doing alright, just kind of short on silver, but it looks like zinc's about to get maxed out, which is interesting, but not much you can do there. So we have our setup here. So we want to try to make it fit in this same square. And picking up setups can always be a little difficult, because you don't want things getting dropped on the ground, so usually you can unplug the power or pick up the inserters. And it looks like that took care of the power, so now we can just pick everything up. And oh, that's so slow. But I don't want to use bots though, because bots are pretty inefficient when it comes to picking up loaded machines, because they have to pick up all the individual items as well. One other thing we can try to do here, I was thinking that I wanted to at least pick up some of this design, so when we copy it we can just use the same thing. And to some extent that is true. So whatever. Just grab that. But I was thinking that if we got the higher tier of electric poles, the reach would be farther. And yeah, there'd be some handcrafting involved, but since we're about to put those on a bus, I'm fine with doing some handcrafting anyway. So we need the regular poles, add brass, add tin copper wire, and we get the medium pole. So let's grab that. And I do want to research it first, which is a little annoying. So hopefully that's all the processes there. And luckily, since this is actually green science, it should get researched pretty quickly. We need to pick up all of this, but I kind of want to preserve all of the liquid glass that we've already made. So because of that, I'm going to open this up all the way and just do a temporary wire here. Just to let it grind through all of the liquid glass that we have left over. So we have our new tiers of poles. So now we can do some comparisons. Where here's the reach of the original poles. Wire reach of 9. Supply area of 7 by 7. And you can already tell the next tier ones are much larger. Now supply area is 9 by 9 with a reach of 11. So they still have the 2 square gap in the middle, but now they reach out much farther. And as far as the big poles go, supply area is the same, but now instead of a reach of 30, they can go 40. So, also useful. No point in upgrading the entire factory, but any new setup should use these new poles, because why not? So for now, can do some handcrafting. It looks like this is working its way through here. Okay, the rest of that looks pretty good. We can just erase it. Let's do some of our setup here. First part needs 12.5 machines. And this is going to make 2 red belts worth. So really, any existing setup ought to work fine. We'll just take this and modify it. Looks like everything is centered. Well, some are centered in the middle and some are centered on the side, which is a little odd, but whatever. We'll just plop this in here. Of course, the machines are better. Let's run some poles there for now, so there's no flashing. Extend this down a little bit. Get the belts the right color. And I don't know if this will help. It kind of does, actually. Having the longer reach, but with this particular setup, still need the same number of poles. And we switch these to glass. Except actually, it's the second tier of glass, which is a little problematic. Let's just copy this over here. Because now we have 2 liquid inputs instead of the 1. It's actually kind of hard to tell just by looking at this which one is which. But it looks like this one on the inside would be the molten lead. So this setup's going to be a little bigger. Are these kind of speed limited? To some extent they are. Because we're going to have 12.5 machines, but need 25 inserters, so that's basically reds. So it's going fast enough to where we probably don't want to do a distance changing inserter. And we want it to be the full amount here. We can't flip it either. Boo. Well, we'll take what we can flip then. And it's actually going to have 2 outputs as well. 2 solid outputs. So one is glass, and the other one is going to be the lead oxide. So we're going to need filter inserters here. This just got a little more complicated. It wasn't quite so simple as copy and paste. Well, these ones will output the glass. Then we'll need another set on the other side, outputting that lead oxide. So it would be something like this, and we would need 2 of them. Wow, the reach of those poles is so far. You only need the 1 in the middle here. Well, let's wait on the power pole positioning until it's been placed. Hopefully it still fits. It seems like it would. So we'd want to plop this in here with it like lined up like that. So good thing we left extra space in here. And we could have done it much more narrowly by using distance changing inserters and just had more of them. That would have saved quite a few squares. But we have an output here, and it would be 2 belts instead of 1. Although it would be lined up better if it was right here instead. I guess we could limit this again. And we need to worry about that lead oxide, which can be done off to the side here. Could potentially do some direct insertion here. If we just get rid of that speed module, add an extra efficiency in there, and then they can just go into each other. Or we have blast furnace, taking the input of the lead oxide, And that's a lot of inserters. It's actually 2 stack inserters per machine. And then they would go through, taking the lead ingots, turning them into the molten lead, which would then get distributed back to where it needs to go. Let's see, we kind of want to make sure that all of this can fit. So we can kind of put this up here in such a way where we can kind of squeeze a tank in there and still have room for stuff to move around. And luckily there's plenty of space down here for expansion. It's a lot tighter up here with these big strand casters, but now that we have faster machines and modules, it probably could be squeezed in quite a bit. Modules are amazing, aren't they? They let you get away with so much stuff that you couldn't before. So we have that, and we want 2 more of them. And those need to be the shorter versions. I guess those ones don't matter, but I'll make them short because they don't have to be long. And I guess we had a 4 corners tank before, but we don't really need one. So I'm pretty sure this will work just fine. In fact, it will. If it's spaced a little bit. You can kind of put it right here. So we definitely need to seed this. And we'll also need to have a buffer. So the buffer probably makes sense on the belts. And let's see. These ones probably don't have to be red, but there might be slightly less logistical problems if they're all just red. But we can do a buffer chest in here. And, well, annoyingly, looks like it just doesn't quite fit, but I think we can move this up by 1 square. Because we can squeeze it in there. 1 more. Which lets us get in here, get a chest, and it doesn't need to have a limiter or anything on it. And we'll need to deliver fuel, which will have to come from fairly far away. But down here from somewhere. And we do need all the modules. So speed there, efficiency there, and I think all of these are probably speeds too. Okay, well now we've got our 6 induction furnaces, and to make it symmetrical, they would be like up here somewhere. It's interesting it made a request for only a partial load of glass. Oh, I guess it's been requesting glass while I've been here, so that's why. It's because that's all the glass that's there. But to make it symmetrical, we'd put it in the middle, but we could probably make it a lot smaller if we just put it on the side, because we'll need 6 machines, and we already have the 6 machines right here, so we're basically doing the same thing. Or at least the same footprint. Where is glass? There we go. And we can try to line it up to make it symmetrical within our power to do so. And let's get another tank in here. We can kind of drop it in on the other one. Does require a little zigzag, but that way everything else is straight. And both of those will fill up all the way. And then we need to get that glass mixture in there, and it looks like it's 2 red belts. Or a stack inserter on each side. Well, LTN seems to be handling things okay. I know it's kind of short on various things, but well, nothing's coming to a crashing halt. It's just shipping what it can, and it doesn't seem like it's doing any needless shipping. So all seems pretty good there. And speed modules. So then we have a fairly complicated setup here where we have 2 red belts of input and then 2 red belts of output of the glass mixture. And luckily lots of inserters and whatnot in here. Though we do have some extra glass mixture. So probably can just throw that in there and let it get processed. They go a lot faster than they used to. Okay, so we have the setup we need to make here, so let's just throw this in here. And I wanted to upgrade the size of the power poles, because I knew that would change how we do this setup. Especially with these smaller machines. That now we can make them 4 deep instead of 3. And despite the upgrades, they're still yellow inserters. So we'll grab the inputs there. And just eject the outputs. We got different ways of doing this. But I guess we should make them like 30 deep. And then do 2 of them. So if that's 8. We got 16. 24. And then 32. It's a little bit too much, so we can grab these guys off the end. Double check the number, should be 30. Yep. It's a lot more compact than it used to be. And then we need 2 of them. And we also need to have our setup making lime. But we're going to work on that on the next episode. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.